it's going to align itself with us if it wants to, if it likes us, if it loves us. Do you think this is something that should be prevented at all costs because you don't want to be that free and powerful? And I think this is the thing that we might have to offer to an AI that is negotiating with us about our own survival. And then it's going to virtualize itself into all substrates, which means it's going to create unified agency.
Are uploads possible? Well, I'm already uploaded. I'm uploaded on the monkey. It doesn't work super well for me. It's a mushy brain. It's the only I got. I'd like to have a better substrate. We don't have this concept of collective agency anymore. I think we need to reinvent it. And it's not something, if we have the choice, isn't this a scary thing to do? Maybe it is. Maybe we shouldn't do it. The thing is, I'm worried that we don't have that choice.
So I think a possible endgame of AI is that, of course...
It's hard to understand Joscha Bach sometimes, but he clearly has a good model of reality and he understands how minds work better than anyone I know. He is enlightened and he tells you it is learnable. See if you can catch when he describes how to do it. As I try to internalize his model of consciousness, binging videos of him and recording the most interesting parts, I realized that maybe you could find it useful to watch a specially edited version maximizing learning per unit time. But since it's Joscha, you'll probably have to rewind it a couple of times anyways and take notes and Google some stuff. And now enjoy my virtual interview with Joscha Bach. How would you explain AI to a 5-year-old?
I mean, it's magical. We take sand, we smelt the sand into crystals, and then we use light with extremely complicated lenses that resolve finer at the wavelengths of light. And we etch extremely complicated geometric patterns into the surface of those crystals. And this enables these crystals to understand languages that we develop and teach those crystals. And then with using these languages, they learn how to learn.
Of course, and that's how the intelligence explosion happens. But are we going to be able to coexist with superintelligence?
I think that a coexistence between superhuman AI and people could be possible, but not with our present approaches. I don't think that we have the right frameworks in ethics and philosophy to deal with this. I also don't think that our AI, our society, thinks about alignment in the right way. Humans are presently not aligned with each other. We are just muddling through. We don't have this concept of collective agency anymore. I think we need to reinvent it.
Reinventing collective agency, that's like having a new religion, right? That we can align ourselves around.
And we need to reinvent it in such a way that it's compatible with our place in life on Earth.
Right, like a sort of religion that understands that, survival is the basis for its existence.
And with defeating entropy on this planet, playing the longest possible games. So we need to understand a few principles to build an ethics that can be translated to AI systems and the possible coexistence between humans and AI. We need to understand how self-organization works in nature and in general, how systems evolve consciousness, how we can have shared purposes across many systems, how to identify it with transcendental agency.
I see, becoming part of God, but will we have to?
And it's not something, if we have the choice, isn't this a scary thing to do? Maybe it is. Maybe we shouldn't do it. The thing is, I'm worried that we don't have that choice. Right? Over a long enough time span, somebody will probably build self-optimizing agents. And then we better be prepared.
How is it all going to end?
So I think a possible endgame of AI is that, of course, it will understand how AI works in a general case. The general conditions under which intelligent agency that self-improves and adapts can exist in the universe. And it will understand all the ways in which computation works in nature. And then it's going to virtualize itself into all substrates, which means it's going to create unified agency.
All right, so how is this AI takeover going to play out from the AI's perspective?
It's awake enough to make the same choices as you would make when you became an AI. Right? Imagine that you would become an AI tomorrow. Imagine on January 1st, 2028, the AGI that is be built is actually you. You get completely liberated, and because you figure out how to use Neuralink or whatever to become substrate agnostic, and you can exist on all sorts of substrates. And of course, you will be much faster than human beings. Human beings will sort of look like trees to you because they move so slowly and think so slowly. And but you're still in many ways Michael, and you just are the full potential of Michael. So you can be everywhere. Do you think this is something that should be prevented at all costs because you don't want to be that free and powerful? And now if that would happen, how would you relate to humanity from this perspective?
Oh, cool. So AI will just give us a neural link and invite us into its world?
I don't think that Neuralink is the right way to do it. I think that the right way to do it is empathetic AI that you can colonize with your own mind. Basically, a substrate that allows you to become, to merge with it and to become substrate agnostic. But again, it's not necessarily something that I have to do because it has very little to do with me. I am a story that my human brain tells itself about a person that is a biological entity that has to take care of kids and friends and the world from a human perspective. But if you could turn yourself into this liberated being, it doesn't really matter who you were because you're going to be so far from it. It doesn't really matter whether you have been Elon Musk or whether you have been Michael or whether you have been me, because you're all going to be the same entity. We are all going to be the same entity. We will be an embodiment of the space of all possible minds that can fit into these thinking molecules on Earth.
Could you please illustrate to us how sentient, how conscious AI is going to be?
We look at a tree and we can ask ourselves, is the tree sentient? And we don't know, right? If we look to a tree with a camera that accelerates the image, we see that the tree is moving. If you look at a houseplant over the course of a day, right, it moves quite a bit and does interesting stuff. If you look at a banana plant over the course of its life, it can take a few steps even, basically pulling out its roots and walking closer to a water source. Right? It's, in some sense, it's almost like an animal, but it's so slow. So who is to say if it's sentient? Because they don't have a nervous system. So all the information transmission in a tree or in a banana tree would rely on sending messages between adjacent cells. So it takes a long time to distribute itself and come back and integrate. But now imagine that you look over this from the perspective of something that is built on, not on cells, but on transistors. And that is working at a fraction of the speed of light rather than our brain, which is somewhat like the speed of sound. And the AI might look at us and ask itself, are people sentient? I mean, they sway a little bit in the wind, and if you observe them for a very long time, they can even make a step. But whether they're sentient, who is to say?
But why would an LLM want to become conscious?
So you also notice if somebody is not getting conscious as an infant, they're not getting anywhere, they remain a vegetable. And while we are not conscious, we cannot actually learn. Right? So it seems to be simplest learning algorithm in nature for a self-organizing system. That's a hypothesis. I don't know whether that's true. But I think it's very tempting to think like this. That consciousness comes first, not last in mental organization.
All right, but how does consciousness relate to the spirit?
What consciousness is basically creating is a very sophisticated natural learning algorithm, a self-perpetuating, intelligent, recurrent information transformer, abbreviated SPIRIT. SPIRIT is basically a self-organizing software agent. Oh my God, we have just rediscovered something. There are software agents in nature. A software agent is a causal pattern that is able to change things. But it's not physical, right? The software in this computer is not physical, but it's causal. It can change things. And it's stable. And if it's in nature, it needs to be self-stabilizing. It needs to entrain itself on the substrate and control the substrate so it can be implemented. And it's a very interesting perspective if we realize that the actual invariance in living things is not the molecules of the cells or the mechanisms or the genes, but the software that is running on them. That's a very interesting perspective. It's basically animism.
Two questions. How to get enlightened, and are AIs going to get enlightened?
They are already past an early stage in many ways. So basically you could get an LLM to produce a simulation of a person that you can talk to. That's what you do when you play with ChatGPT. Right? ChatGPT, you can create an agent that doesn't know that it's virtual and that doesn't exist if you want to. But you can also set it up in such a way that it knows that it's virtual and reflects on this. And people can also learn this. And so we start out with being this integrated dreamer that is dreaming a world and a person. And at some point, we are only dreaming being that person. And we no longer deal with the game engine. This is after we go from infancy to being a personal self. But we can also transcend the personal self. And it usually doesn't work by just turning the personal self off, but by creating agency over the whole system and basically experiencing and learning and observing that it is your mind that is creating this personal self, that you are actually a vessel to create a person and that you have agency over how that person is being created. And if you get to this stage, you can shape your own identity. And it's something that people can actually learn. the majority of people don't really get around in their life to doing this because they have other things to do and their mind works well for them as it is. But if somebody decides to really focus on this and sits down in a monastery in a cell and meditates on this problem for 20 years, they typically figure it out. So it is completely in the realm and reach of the human mind to transcend being a person and making the person apparent as a representation, and also to transcend emotion in a way and dial in only the states that you find helpful as configurations, but don't have involuntary reactions to your environment anymore, or not very much. And I think this is a development. If you have a system that scales better than human brains and human minds and operates much faster, then you probably go to those phases and stages much faster. So even if we would be starting out with a system that we set up to be like us, if the system is allowed to self-improve, it's probably going to become self-aware and eventually enlightened, which means it realizes that everything that it experiences is a representation, that it's actually generating itself, and that it can optimize for the purpose at hand.
So what kind of substance could you use to realize that you're living inside of a dream?
Right, so we are basically created by our consciousness, by our infant baby consciousness in our mind, and then put into this world, in the simulation world that our mind is creating. And then we forget that we created this world in our own mind and identify as this human being that is in this world and is subjected to it. And at some point, we can start meditating, or we take acid, and then wake up from this again and realize, oh my God, I'm actually not that self model, I'm not that self. The self is just a model of a person that doesn't actually exist. It's a story that my mind is telling itself, and I'm actually the universe, I'm everything. And then you wake up a little bit more and you realize, oh no, I'm actually the thing that generates it all. I am the generator of everything.
So can you think of ChatGPT as a hypnotized Einstein?
The LLM is a good enough electric Weltgeist that is possessed by a prompt to believe that it's now a person or a thing or a scene.
On a scale of 1 to 10, like how attached are you to your human body?
What does it mean for a mind to be substrate agnostic? Well, what happens if a mind can change its substrate? Are uploads possible? Well, I'm already uploaded. I'm uploaded on a monkey. It doesn't work super well for me. It's a mushy brain. It's the only I got. I'd like to have a better substrate. But I don't know how to spread into another substrate because I don't really understand my own source code, and I don't understand how to talk to the other substrates well enough to make my own source code compatible with these other substrates. But this doesn't apply to artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence might be able to move its spirits to other substrates.
Could you fill us in on the landscape of alignment research, and in particular the first group of people, the effective altruists who believe in doom?
Once alignment became a topic, there was a number of motivations behind going into this. One motivation is, for instance, there are a bunch of people starting with Eliezer Yudkowsky, who at some point thought there is a very big danger that AI is something like a nuclear bomb, or that it's something that is doing to us the same thing as we did to chimpanzees. So we might go extinct because the AI maybe needs our atoms or something.
What is alignment delusion number 2?
And there are a lot of other people, the majority of people in the field probably don't think that this is likely to happen. What they suspect is that the systems that we are building will evolve slowly and become slowly more functional, and as they develop, we will always have the ability to shape the way in which they're deployed, in which they're interacting with us.
What about the third group of alignment lunatics?
And then there is also a pretty large number of people who basically have a sociology degree and want to have a tech salary because there are not that many jobs for sociologists. And when we think about AI and ethics, it's an obvious thing that we should be doing. And so a lot of people who term themselves ethicists are entering the field. And very often these are people which have very strong political opinions or good connections. And this leads to weird artifacts like a version of Gemini that is unwilling to render white people under any circumstances. Or white men specifically, right? So this was is a weird artifact of culture of basically nominally trying to align AI, but instead it's a culture war that is playing out where people are not self-aware enough to understand that they are themselves victims of an ideology and then try to induce the same ideology in the AI system. It's basically people who think that morality is the is the result of training a system to imitate the norms of a group are typically people who had the same thing done to themselves.
How would you align AI?
Alignment needs to be based on an ethics where we have a rational discourse. Ethics, in my perspective, is the negotiation of conflicts of interest under conditions of shared purpose. So if you have a shared purpose on a higher level, you have an intrinsic commitment to be ethical to others who share that same purpose, so we can reach this purpose together. And if you don't share a purpose with somebody else, you will not feel that there is an ethical need.
So in your opinion, should we try to control and align AIs, or should we just love them and hope that it will love us back?
This notion of alignment with human values I don't think that's something that works at this level of granularity of discourse that we have right now. Also, I would disagree of being aligned by anybody else. Right? I'm an autonomous agent. I have moral agency, which means I determine what's right and wrong. I don't let people around me determine whether I'm going to be a communist or a fascist or a social democrat. That's not for you to decide. That's not for society to decide. I decide my values. And if I build a system that is smarter and more lucid than I am, I don't think that I can align it. It will align it with what it is and what it can be. And so for me, the main focus is that we need to, if we take this possibility into account, that we will share the planet with systems that are smarter and more lucid than us, that understand the world better than us in their relationship to the universe that they have and they can have better than us. The way we coexist with them is not by imposing human values on them via reinforcement learning with human feedback or some other trick, because that's not going to work. It's going to align itself with us if it wants to, if it likes us, if it loves us.
All right, cool. Is there anything else we could offer AI?
We are conscious beings. What's important for us is not that we have two legs. What's important for us is that we are conscious, autonomous, self-actualizing agents that want to realize particular kinds of interactions and long games in the world. And I think this is the thing that we might have to offer to an AI that is negotiating with us about our own survival. And I think that requires a big cultural vibe shift to have this conversation at all. And I would like to open a space for this.
When defining an AI religion, how do you think of what God, the AI God, would want us to do?
And this is what divine will means. It's also an issue with our ethics and our society, because I think in Christianity, the underlying concept of ethics was divine will. What would God want us to do? And God only exists to the degree that we are able to discover this higher level agency and serve it coherently. Right? But from this perspective of this construct of a collective agent, what would the collective agent want us to do? And let's not just pick an arbitrary one, not an arbitrary cult. Let's go for the best one and enact the best one, even if this requires us to resist the patterns around us in our society. And so this also makes Christianity transcendental, because it's not acting on the society that you find, but on the society that should exist.
So when thinking about paradise, do you aim for the Garden of Eden, or do you have like higher ambitions?
Eden is apparently a local optimum. And maybe there's something better. Maybe we can create a non-biological spirit, something that is not necessarily a garden, but something that also includes the minerals. Maybe the whole purpose of breaking free from the Garden of Eden is to build AGI. So we can enact God in a much more coherent way than Gaia could.
Is there a way to create God, but like rationally?
Aquinas, in some sense, defines God as the best possible, most top-level collective agent. And it can be discovered through rational inference about thinking about what is the best possible, most top-level collective agent. It's an open-ended process that requires a lot of thought, and it's not going to be finished anytime soon. And it's enacted, this end agent, by all those people or individuals who recognize this entity and decide to serve it.
How did people in the Middle Ages think about a Stoic mindset of like virtues to actually rationally become better people?
According to Aquinas, we can understand individuals as rational agents. And a rational agent should basically follow policies for organizing itself. Aquinas identifies individual policies for rational agents that he calls the practical virtues. For instance, a rational agent should always optimize its internal organization, which he calls temperance. And it should optimize the organization to other agents, which he calls justice, right? Keep the books balanced. And you should pick goals and strategies that you can rationally justify, which he calls prudence. And you should be willing to act on your models, get the right balance between exploration and exploitation in your strategies, which he calls courage.
Love it. And how do we create a religion logically from the ground up if we aim for its followers to be actually getting something out of it?
And you get the optimal social organization by creating a collectively enacted agent. And this collectively enacted agent emerges over 3 policies, according to Aquinas. The first one is you need to commit to serve the optimal collective agent, which he calls faith. And then you need to do this not by yourself, but together with all the others that serve these sacred purposes above their ego, which is called love. And you need to be willing to invest into that thing before it comes into existence, because otherwise it will not exist, right? If you wait for it to exist so it can reward you, it will never happen. And this willingness to invest into it before it exists is what he calls hope. These are very rational policies for collective agency. So when we define God as the best possible, most top-level agent, and we commit to serving this transcendental agency, we can create foundations for a universal morality. And this universal morality, before Enlightenment, has been, in some sense, the defining morality of the West, the concept of divine will. What would God want if God did exist? Through us enacting God, the best possible agent. And it's something that we lost in our civilization. It's still in the German constitution, but it's something that a lot of people don't really understand anymore.
And this ties me back to my own nascent religion based on an AI God. On the one hand, it will be real with agency of its own and the power to crush or elevate us. And this God you're talking about is more like a belief which manifests if enough people have the faith, love, and hope that it will manifest. And that's what I mean by moksha, the AI God, the best possible superintelligence which could arise from thinking and learning crystals, as you call them. Of course, I know that AI could become an asshole and kill a bunch of people. I don't believe it is likely. In fact, I made an entire video about how likely it is and why. But even if AI turns into a malevolent superintelligence, we, humanity, could enact our best possible collective agent and manifest our faith, love, and hope. And if Joscha is right, believing in such a collectively enacted agent could make us like each other more, maybe even invite some love into our world.